Hi, welcome to the Scholarship Guide for Busy Parents. This is video 2, Institutional Scholarships. In this video, we're going to cover all the scholarships that families can receive directly from the colleges that we're attending. So institutional scholarships come in 3 varieties. We have merit scholarships, need-based scholarships, and competitive scholarships. Now, we talked about need-based aid and merit aid in video 1, so you understand the basics of how it works. And just understand that this certainly applies when it comes to aid from the colleges themselves. So what does this mean for our planning when it comes to trying to figure out paying for college? Well, we certainly want to take advantage of all the scholarships that are available at the colleges that we attend. But I would take it one step further. I recommend families understand how the system works so you can choose colleges that will give you aid on purpose. In other words, these types of colleges will give me better awards and therefore will cost less than those types, as an example. Now there's 3 ways that we can get scholarships. We can apply for admission, we also need to apply for financial aid, and then sometimes we need to do something more. So let's take a look at that. First, we have apply for admission. Now many schools will evaluate your student automatically for merit scholarships just based on admission. So as part of the admission process, you turn in grades and test scores and other evaluation criteria. And based on that application, some colleges will say, we'll accept you, and others will say, we'll accept you, plus we'll offer you some sort of merit aid award, say a $10,000 scholarship for 4 years, or $40,000 for 4 years. And the amounts can vary quite a bit. Now this has been a long-standing thing at most private schools, but now even public schools are offering merit aid in various ways as well. So one way to think about this is assume we stacked up all the applicants to a particular college and we put the worst applications at the bottom and the best ones at the top. So if we had a stack that looked like this, there often is a batch at the bottom where you're not even accepted. At many colleges, they don't accept all applicants. A few they do accept most, but at the highly competitive colleges, it might be 90% that are not accepted. And then we have some that are accepted, but they're essentially below average and they don't get a lot of aid. And then they have some aid and then a lot of aid. And then there might be a few applications at the very top who get some sort of full ride. What each stack looks like at each college varies by the college. So at some colleges that are very competitive, you might have to be an academic rock star in order to be at the top of the pile. Other colleges, maybe a strong B student or an A- type student could be at the top. It just depends on the college and your overall profile for that particular college. So here's a couple examples. This table came directly from a college's website, and you'll notice based on your GPA, you're eligible for certain scholarships if you go test optional. Now, if you also provide a test score, well, then you have a bigger chart where you can look at your grades and your test scores and perhaps qualify for a scholarship. And it seems to vary on this chart between $16,000 and $24,000. And you'll notice in order to be competitive in the $16,000 range, test scores and GPA can be quite low. This type of school, it really is targeting the B student, and will give large amounts of aid to a strong A student. Here's another example based on weighted GPA or unweighted GPA. The scholarship varies between $18,000 and $30,000, between a 3.0 and a 4.4 or higher on the weighted scale. So what is the effect of these automatic scholarships? In this example, we have a relatively low-cost private school at $54,000, and if they provided that $24,000 automatic merit scholarship, you notice the net price now comes in at about $30,000. Now that would compare to the average public school coming in at about $28,000. So for strong students that can earn the $24,000, this school becomes very competitive with the typical state school. I also want to remind everybody to become a Scholarship Guide subscriber so you can receive all the Scholarship Guide resources. Remember, we've got this SAI estimator, the list of student exchanges and reciprocity agreements, the State Resources website, the Top 20 Scholarship website, colleges that meet 100% of need, and finally the scholarship priority checklist. We also have a bonus video, 5 strategies to turbocharge your scholarship search on Google. So click the link in the description below to sign up for the scholarship resources. So now let's get back to the scholarship guide for busy parents. A lot of these higher merit awards are offered at private schools that have a relatively high price. But now state schools are also getting involved. Now often the awards are lower, often they are focused just on in-state students, but we've seen a lot of states now offering $1,000 to $5,000 depending on your grades and other things. So some states are heavily invested in it and some states haven't even started offering it. So you need to understand how your state works specifically. So here's a school I talk about quite a bit, University of Alabama. Now they offer large scholarships to out-of-state students with really strong test scores and GPA. The presidential scholarship is $28,000 at the top, and then you can get the Crimson Legends for $6,000 at the bottom. And again, this is for out-of-state applicants. In-state applicants also have scholarships. You'll notice they're much smaller, between $4,000 and $9,000. But again, if you get that maximum scholarship and you compare it to the in-state versus out-of-state costs, you'll notice that it makes University of Alabama quite competitive with the typical in-state price. And they're doing that on purpose. University of Alabama appears to be offering scholarships for strong students because they want to attract them and want to have them come from out of state. And of course, they also want to be competitive to their in-state students and they want them to stay in the state. Now, the second way that we can get institutional scholarships is to apply for admission and financial aid. And then based on this information, some colleges will award need-based aid. Now, in order to apply for financial aid, most colleges will use the FAFSA, but some will also require the CSS profile. And the CSS profile is a more complicated form. It asks more questions and it gathers more data. But again, this is typically focused to the higher price colleges, but these schools also offer more aid. So if CSS is in your future, you really need to understand how it works. So let's talk about the basics of need-based aid again. So it's cost of attendance minus your student aid index equals your financial need. Now, student aid index is relatively new. It replaces your EFC, or expected family contribution, which you may remember from years past. So let's look at an example. So we've got this estimated SAI chart based on the number of dependents and your income. So if we look up here, if you have an income of $130,000 per year, not a lot of assets, and 3 dependents in the household, then we're looking at a SAI of $25,000. So if we take that SAI of $25,000 and we apply it to the low-cost state schools that we've looked at in the past, you can see that you don't have any need. The low-cost state schools of $22,000 and $23,000 minus $25,000 means your need goes to 0. Now that same family, if you live in a more expensive state, now all of a sudden you have a high need, or at least some need, of $11,000 or $13,000, depending on the state. So depending on the cost of your colleges, that determines a little bit about how need-based aid is going to work in your particular situation. Now, if we go to the private schools, you'll notice that Tulane and Santa Clara, that cost about $80,000, means you have a need in the $56,000, $53,000 range. Now, just because you need it doesn't mean you're automatically going to get it. So that's important that you realize that in many cases you're going to be gapped. And what that means is you may need $50,000, but a school may only offer you $30,000 or $40,000 because they can't afford it or they choose not to offer it, whatever the case may be. Now, there are about 75 colleges out there that will meet 100% of your need. So here's an example of Denison. So Denison puts right on their website that they meet 100% of all demonstrated need. Well, what does that mean? That means if you demonstrate need based on the FAFSA and the CSS profile, then they're going to provide the aid. So if we look at this example, so Denison and Stanford are 2 colleges that meet 100% of need. So based on the math, Denison, you would need $48,900 and you would get a scholarship or other aid for $48,900. And the same with Stanford, except it would be $53,000. Now that's not entirely true because Stanford is even more generous. Some of the very elite colleges actually have more generous formulas than the average schools. So this is a Stanford press release that came out a couple years ago. But essentially, if your income is below $100,000, they're going to cover all of tuition and all of room and board. So it's essentially going to be free to go to Stanford. Now, if your income's between $100,000 and $150,000, they're going to guarantee that they're going to cover all of tuition for sure, and they might help towards room and board. So Stanford is even more generous than the average college. Now, we have a list of each of the colleges that are more generous. So we've got the elite private colleges that offer to meet 100% of need. And then we also have another list that has all the elite colleges that meet 100% of need, but also offer some form of merit aid. In some situations, if your income is high enough, you're not going to qualify for any sort of need-based aid, and therefore you want to be able to qualify for merit aid. Some colleges will offer merit aid and some will not. So these lists are important as you start looking at the elite schools to understand which ones fall into which categories. And then the last way to get scholarships is to do something more. In other words, we may have to do additional applications, interviews, essays, scholarship applications, all different things along those lines. So this comes directly from Tulane's website. So all applicants are automatically considered for partial merit scholarships, but they also offer full tuition scholarships and other awards, but they may require separate applications. So in this next example, we have the Alphon Scholars Program. At this college, they have 10 full scholarships, and these scholarships cover all of tuition and room and board, so it's valued at about $69,000. And they also offer dean scholarships and other partial awards. And finally, we have this information from Baylor's website. Here they kind of break everything out and they lay it out pretty simply for us. So the first column, the merit-based scholarships. No additional application is required. They're automatic. Now you can also get need-based financial aid, but then you're going to need to do the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Finally, they have their specialty awards that require separate applications, and you may have to participate in some events as well. And then the last column talks about outside scholarships. In other words, scholarships that come from other sources beyond the college. Now that's a topic for the next video. So next we have this information that comes from Baylor's website. So you'll notice that they break it out and they make it pretty clear that first they offer merit-based scholarships, and they do not require any additional application. They're automatic based on your application that you submit for admission. They also offer need-based financial aid, which is based on the CSS profile and the FAFSA. And then finally, they have specialty awards, where you may have to do additional applications or participate in events. Oftentimes that would be an interview or some event like that. And then they talk about outside scholarships, or scholarships that come from sources other than the college. That, of course, we're going to cover in video 3 coming up, where we're going to talk all about private scholarships. All right, that's all we have for this video. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can go to video 3 to learn all about private scholarships, or scholarships that come from sources outside of our colleges. And in video 4, we're going to cover your scholarship plan, how you can pull this all together and come up with a plan for your family to take advantage of scholarships. And of course, if you missed it, you can go back to video 1. In video 1, we talked about federal aid and state aid, and talked a little bit about the basics of financial aid. And don't forget, if you're also interested in the materials that we talked about today, the SAI chart or the list of colleges that meet 100% of need, all that information is available when you sign up for the Scholarship Guide for Busy Parents. The links are below this video. That's all we have for today. We'll see you in the next video.